Very quickly, when it comes to pharmaceutical clinical development, I just wanted to make sure that we're all on the same page when we think about phases of pharmaceutical development. A vaccine, a drug is discovered. This discovery happens in vitro, so either on a chemical structure, a protein is discovered, a gene could be discovered responsible for a disease or partially responsible for the disease, which is identified as a pharmacological target. A medicine is developed for that, and it could be a monoclonal antibody, a protein, an inhibitor, a small molecule of some sort. Now the apparatus is very wide. It needs to go into in vitro experiments. So there are a number of experiments that need to prove that that molecule does what we are asking it to do. There is a huge, very long preclinical phase. The preclinical phase of drug development can take up to 5 or 6 years at times, especially if you have to run those teratogenicity studies. That could take up to 7 years, so just in the preclinical phase. Finally, when all of the preclinical phase that includes non-animal and animal experiments is completed, new drugs go into humans. Traditionally, they're tested first in healthy volunteers, and that's very small numbers of people, and that's only for checking on acute safety. So you want to make sure that the moment you give those drugs to people, they don't cause any harm. Phase 2 clinical development is normally conducted in patients. And at this point you actually start looking for efficacy or for a clinical response. And that's again a small study in a select group of patients. This is a very controlled experiment. You set up the boundaries very narrowly so that you are more likely to get a very clear yes or no answer. And you keep assessing safety. So we're talking about tens of people in phase 1, maybe 100, 150 in phase 2. And then you go into phase 3, where you start exposing larger number of people. And these are people with the disease, but now they're much larger numbers. So we're talking about hundreds to thousands to tens of thousands of people, depending on the disease. So in the case of vaccines, phase 3 is normally in tens of thousands of individuals. And the larger number of individuals is mostly because you want to identify more rare adverse events or safety concerns. And the broader the population that the drug is destined to, the broader, the larger the number to prove that even rare, to actually detect even rare safety concerns might be. And then you keep following them up. Even when you finish your phase 3 study, they might have an endpoint of, from 6 months to 10 years, depending on the indication. You keep following people on and on and on, and you keep reporting the safety of these people on and on and on. At that point, with that package of phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3, you go to the FDA and say, I have enough data to ask for a license for this drug, because I believe that the risk-benefit of this drug deserves for this drug to be approved and available to people on the market. Then the FDA will take the dossier, which is thousands of pages and hundreds of thousands of tables, when we're talking about large studies, and they would go through that. They would have an independent team of assessors, and they would come back with a number of questions to which the pharmaceutical industry will respond. The final step is to set up an independent panel. This would be physicians that have no association with that pharmaceutical company. key opinion leaders that have no association with the product and with the pharmaceutical company, who assess the data independently. And only if that is all goes well, you finally get an approval. And the approval will result in a label, in a product label, and the product label would be for a specific indication, for only for the indications that have been studied. And it will list all of the safety events observed in the studies, but also all of the potential safety concerns that the mechanism of action of the molecule can carry, even if they've not been seen. And then you keep monitoring it. And sometimes the FDA has withdrawn their approval after events happened in certain medicines. For instance, there was a blood pressure medication that was recently withdrawn. Medications get withdrawn every day. So it's all on the basis of actual data and data that is generated.